Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the GM. It is your guy Boulanger. Up next on the GM, Ravens versus Chiefs post game reaction. Do me a quick favor, hit like if it is your first time checking us out. Hit subscribe. Also hit the notification bell so that you get updates when we upload new content. Let's talk about it. Well, welcome to the off season, and let me do something before I get into my frustrated rant. I want to thank all of you guys, all 524 of you, for joining with us, man, and connecting with us and hanging out with us, man. I really, really appreciate it, man. When I started this thing a year ago, I had no expectations. I didn't know what we would do, who would connect, and how things would go. But to have 524 people to say, I want to be a part of what you got going on is something special. I know we're not the biggest channel, right? And I know we don't make content like everybody else. We don't have the glitz and the glamour. We don't have the backgrounds, the intro music. Maybe that'll come in the future. But we are what we are, and we do what we do, and we say what we say. And I appreciate you guys having a heart for, honest conversation, because that's what we want to do here. That's what we've tried to do here. A revelation came to me late in this season, and what I discovered was conversations for the season. News is for the off season. And so we'll take a more approach, a news reporting approach this off season. We're still going to have a lot of content for conversation. I don't know how much, I don't know my schedule, that kind of thing. But I do know that after this week, I'm going to take next week off through the Super Bowl. I might do a video or two. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm not going to indulge any of the sports content because I know that as a Ravens fan, we're the laughing stock of the league. And I know that as a Lamar Jackson fan, him as a man, him as a person, even more than the player, I know that he's going to catch a lot of heat. And if I have to be honest, so that's where I'll start. And if I have to be honest, it's going to be rightfully deserved. But what ends up happening for Lamar is that anytime there is a criticism of what happened on the field, it then becomes a historical conversation versus a momentary conversation. I'm going to keep it momentary. On yesterday, it looked as if the moment was too big for Lamar, the offense, at times the defense, and most certainly the coaching staff. Lamar Jackson looked nervous, indecisive, whether he wanted to run or throw. And he looked like a version of himself. I'm not going to say a shell of himself. He looked like a different version of himself. Because plays he usually would make, he didn't make on yesterday. And I guess one of the greatest mistakes or travesties of this game would have been the interception in the end zone. Certainly. It was a bad decision. Not necessarily even a bad throw, as much as it was a bad decision. Because if three guys were on Isaiah Likely, then that means somebody somewhere was open. But I think that that was a moment of desperation. I think that you learn to trust who you trust. And in a game last week, Isaiah Likely told him to throw it up. He'll go get it. He threw it up, and Isaiah Likely went and got it. And that's what Lamar Jackson kind of spoke to, not in those exact words, but he kind of spoke to that in his press conference where he said he was telling us what he was thinking on that particular throw and decision and throw. And I can respect that. You see, because as a fan, we look and we think we knew it all or heard it all or we can scheme it all or plan it all. But that's not so because you're not in the moment. You're able to watch and pause your TV and rewind and watch a replay. But when you're in the moment, you're making snap judgments. And I guess he was trying to throw it up to Likely, and maybe he would go up and make a play, but that's not what happened. But there were so many other plays that were not made that put them in that situation. I'm a firm believer that if this happens, then that doesn't happen. So let me give you an example. If the Zay Flowers fumble on the goal line happens, then the throw into the end zone to Isaiah Likely doesn't happen because the score then is different. Unless the Isaiah Likely play happened before. But at this point, I'm so frustrated with the game, I can't even remember which play happened. But I think the Zay Flowers fumble happened first. And since I'm on Zay, man, y'all, please let's show Zay Flowers some love. Without Zay, we wouldn't even have been in a position to do anything to be in this game because he was really the only wide receiver that showed an ability to get open. He was the only wide receiver that showed an ability to make a play. I know Odell showed up with two catches late in the game, and I know, I heard people say they should have got Odell involved earlier, but Odell didn't get involved earlier because Odell couldn't get open earlier. Rashad Bateman couldn't get open earlier. That's why those guys were not involved. But I think Lamar Jackson probably could have had 100 yards rushing if he hadn't have waited so long, waiting on somebody to get open. That's that indecision I'm talking about. We've seen him play in that fashion a couple of other times. I thought that the entire offense panicked when they went down 17-7 going into the half. I thought that the offense was the culprit in this game. Yeah, the defense gave up 17 points in that first half, but they pitched a shutout the rest of the game. And with a little better game management and game situation planning or schematics, it actually should have been 14-7 at halftime. But we'll get into coaching in a second. But back to Lamar, I just feel bad for the guy, man, because he's a good dude. Never, not in any trouble. There's no controversy surrounding him. Just a dude that loves ball, loves his team, and he wants to win. And I think that yesterday was an epic fail at every level of the offense. Every level of the offense. And just because I say Lamar Jackson wasn't good doesn't mean I'm a Lamar Jackson hater. You couldn't have watched that game yesterday and said Lamar Jackson was good. Let me acknowledge the offensive line was trash. Ronnie Stanley was not that great. How many times did we see John Simpson in the backfield beside Lamar Jackson as if he was a running back versus an offensive lineman? We saw that many, many times, at least 5 times in that game, where he was just getting pushed around. And so I know that the guys in front of him didn't play great, but that's where there should have been a momentary adjustment. This team is not good, hasn't been good in the John Harbaugh era in momentary adjustments, meaning something's happening on the field right now. Let's make an adjustment, even if it's a 3-and-out, 4-and-out, or whatever. Let's get on the sideline and make adjustments. This team did not do that offensively yesterday. They continue to go through the same old rigmarole over and over and over again, man. It was absolutely a horrid coaching plan, scheme, execution, play calling, game management. It was all bad. So as I move forward, let me just flat out say Lamar Jackson did not play well yesterday. He did not play to the version of Lamar Jackson that he had shown over the last 9 weeks of the season. He did not show the Lamar Jackson that he showed last week in the second half. And maybe this could have been expected. Maybe this offensive performance could have been expected. I didn't expect it. I predicted a 32-21 win or something like that. But maybe this could have been expected based on what we saw the first half of last week. I'm not 100% sure. But a problem with this team that was even more egregious than Lamar Jackson yesterday was the coaching, top to bottom, offense and defense. Let me go defense because it's a little easier to just talk about the defense very, very quickly. Defensively, it was as if Mike McDonald and this defense had not seen Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes play before. It was as if Travis Kelce had disguised himself in somebody else's jersey so the defense didn't know who they were defending. Because if the plan was to put Kyle Hamilton on him and lock him up or lock him down or whatever we want to call it, that plan should have been scrapped very early. But Travis Kelce, 10 to 12 balls, I can't remember which one it is, for 116 yards. It looked as if Mike McDonald didn't know who he was playing. Now, he did most of his damage in the first half. We played very, very well, locked him up in the second half. But the game was over. Based on the scoreboard, 17-7 at halftime, the game was already over. They had already allowed the damage to be done. You see, this team is poor at making momentary adjustments. Momentary adjustments is what happens in the moment. And they didn't make them on Travis Kelce. The damage was done, and that was that. So, but shout out to the defense, man. They did do what they needed to do to help this team be in position to get a win. Let me jump to the offense side of the ball. I don't know who the point at first, whether it's John Harbaugh or Todd Monken. So let's just let me start with Todd Monken. This was absolutely emblematic of what he had been the first half of the season. It was if he had not called a play for this team ever, so everything was trial and error. It was as if Todd Monken scrapped the game plan in the middle of the first half. Heck, you could say by the second drive that the Baltimore Ravens had, you could say that the game plan was scrapped. How? How is it that Buffalo knows enough to run the ball 30 plus times to the tune of 182 yards? The Baltimore Ravens, who have had the number one run team in the league for years on years on years, rushed the ball 16 times in this game. We couldn't scheme up, plan, adjust, whatever. And you know what? We didn't even need an adjustment. This team was thin in the middle by the time the middle of the second quarter came. At least they were definitely very thin by the first of the second half because Charles Omenihu was out, injured. Willie Gay was already out from the start of the game. And Mike Edwards went down a couple of different times in this game. So they were thin up the middle, and we didn't exploit any of that. We didn't have a mindset to turn around and hand the daggone ball off. And you know what? How about calling a real run play? How about calling a real play action? Why can't we call and run real play actions where the quarterback is under the center, where you turn and you fake it and then you drop back? There is no deception with that repeated shotgun, pistol, fake the handoff like you're handing off a draw play. That ain't no deception. This team on yesterday looked like a version of Greg Roman's playoff teams. That's what this team looked like offensively on yesterday. When the offensive line was looking like garbage, looked like they had holes all in it. We're still calling plays with routes 10, 12, 15 yards down the field. If the offensive line isn't blocking, you call shorter run passes. And if nobody's getting open, call some slants, some things like that to where they can make quicker moves and see if they can get open. But there was about 5 or 6 times where the telecast showed coverage and everybody was locked up. Everybody was locked up. So even when Lamar Jackson had time to throw the ball, guess what? There was nobody to throw it to. And if Lamar had taken off running, he could have had over 100 yards yesterday, easy. You see, not having a real game plan and panicking in the middle of in the midst of the game cost the Baltimore Ravens this game. Because when your quarterback is looking uncertain, when he's looking a little nervous, when he's looking a little jittery in the pocket, you call plays to help him settle down. You call run plays. You turn around and you hand it off to your 235-pound running back in Gus Edwards. You turn around and you hand it off to Dalvin Cook, who did not get any carries. I don't even know what the point of them signing him was. You turn around and you hand it off to Justice Hill. But no, let's just drop back and go deep and go deep and go deep. And I know Lamar Jackson missed on some deep passes and all those kind of things. But I think once he was uncertain about his pocket, once he was uncertain about his blocking, everything after that point was reactionary. Meaning feeling a rush that may not have been there and not feeling one that was. This was a disappointing show by Todd Monken. And now let me get on John Harbaugh, which I will make certain to address in a whole separate video, this coaching staff. John Harbaugh may be the biggest culprit in this game yesterday. Although he doesn't play, he is responsible for how a game flows. John Harbaugh is the worst game manager, team manager, maybe in NFL history. We can look back over the Lamar Jackson era and even into his time to the Super Bowl time frame, where there was many games where it was just poor decisions made. Let me give you the example. The Chiefs were up 10-7, I believe. And no. They were up 14-7. I believe that was the score. And Lamar Jackson completes a pass right before the half, right before the 2-minute warning to Isaiah Likely, puts it at 2nd and 4. We let the clock run out. We take the ball and our timeouts after the 2-minute warning. Now, I understand that John Harbaugh is not the play caller, but he couldn't huddle up with Todd Monken and Lamar Jackson in the 2-minute warning timeout and say, you know what? They got 2 minutes left. We don't want to give this team back the ball. Let's run the ball and see if we can pick up a couple of yards. At least you would have forced the Chiefs to call their timeouts. But you know what they did after the timeout? They threw 2 pass plays, both incomplete, and they ran 8 seconds off the clock. And the Chiefs went down the field and kicked a field goal. Now, the game would feel much different in the second half if you were only down 7 versus 10. Because that 10 points, I believe, caused them to panic. If the game at halftime is 14-7, when we get the field goal, it's 10-14. Because they didn't score after the half. It's 10-14. Now, watch this. Now, instead of having to throw for a touchdown, we could go for a field goal, a couple of field goals. But because of desperation, we have to be put in situations that are not favorable. You see, John Harbaugh came out after the half and said, we need to run the ball more. And we commenced to go out in that second half where the Chiefs didn't score again. And I think we had maybe 5 to 8 runs after the half. That's on John Harbaugh, because if you say we need to run the ball more, you're the head coach. You should be able to give some impression to your offensive coordinator. But that didn't happen. And we've seen this repeated failure under John Harbaugh's leadership. Now, I know nobody really has the guts to get rid of John Harbaugh. Nobody really has the guts to press reset. But in order for the Baltimore Ravens to get to where they need to go, they may need new leadership, because there is a theme to the John Harbaugh era and the Lamar Jackson era. And that's when the money's on the table, they don't collect. This game all around was bad. The best plays were made by Jordan Stout when he was punting. He was punting booming punts. Those were the best plays. The scheme, the execution, the game plan, offensively and defensively, were trash. And the only side of the ball that made a real adjustment to put themselves in a position to take this game was the defense. I feel bad for the Ravens. I feel bad for Ravens Nation. And I feel bad for Lamar Jackson, because I know he's going to take a lot of heat. And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot I can say. I know he doesn't need me to have his defense. But there's nothing I can say to defend this today. Stay tuned, man. I got a lot of hot videos coming out this week. I'm your guy Boulanger. This is the GM.